Now, Bangladesh has been without an elected Prime Minister for the last 18 months. Since 2024 coup, the country has been governed under an interim arrangement led by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus. On Feb 12th, Bangladesh conducted its 13th general election. Polling was held across 299 constituencies in what is being described as the country's most consequential vote in decades. The election is unique. And why? Because this defines post-Khaleda Zia and Sheikh Hasina era. For the first time in years, voters are not choosing between the two Begums. Khaleda Zia is no more and Sheikh Hasina is in India. The era of the political binary appears to be over. Instead, Bangladesh is looking at a new set of power centers. Let me introduce the 5 faces who could emerge as Prime Minister of Bangladesh. And when I say Prime Minister, I mean these are the people in the forefront. They can also be kingmakers. I'll start with Tarique Rahman, son of late Khaleda Zia, former Prime Minister of Bangladesh. He is the chairman of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. He returned after 17 years exile in London, seen as the natural political heir to BNP's legacy. He has redefined the BNP's manifesto in which there is an element of engagement with India. Now, Shafiqur Rahman, that's the Islamist face of Bangladesh. He leads a 111 party alliance, an 11 party alliance anchored by Jamaat-e-Islami. And it represents the country's largest organized Islamist bloc. If successful, this could be the first time an Islamist formation heads Bangladesh. Now I'll come to Nahid Islam, a prominent face of the 2024 coup. And I use this word coup. I don't use this word uprising. He is associated with the Gen Z mobilization that reshaped Bangladeshi politics. He served as an advisor under the Yunus interim government, backed strongly by the younger voters, aligned with Jamaat's coalition structure. Sophisticated face of the Islamists. Another name is Mirza Fakhrul Islam Alamgir, General Secretary of the BNP, considered a consensus builder within party rank, could emerge as a compromise candidate, particularly if the July Charter complicates Tarique Rahman's pathway. A long shot, but nonetheless. And then Sayyid Raizul Karim. He's an Islamic scholar and chief of the Islami Andolan Bangladesh. Commands significant religious influence, may play kingmaker in the event of a fractured mandate or hung parliament. Now, beyond personalities, there is something even more significant. Alongside parliamentary voting, Bangladeshis are also participating in a referendum on the so-called July Charter, an ambitious reform blueprint that could reshape the country's constitutional architecture. So what is this charter about? Basically, it's a proposal for 2 5-year terms for the Prime Minister. It also talks of bicameralism with a 100-member upper house, like India has a lower house and an upper house, Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha. Greater judicial and electoral independence, restoration of the caretaker government framework for the future polls. Now, if approved, these reforms could fundamentally alter how power is structured and transferred in Bangladesh. So tonight, I ask this question: is this the beginning of a new political order in Dhaka, or this is the coup dressed up in the language of democracy in polls? On this issue, I am joined by Barrister Mohibul Hasan Chaudhry, former Education Minister of Bangladesh. Thank you so much, sir. Ambassador Veena Sikri, former High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh. Thank you, madam. Professor Swaran Singh from the School of International Studies, JNU. Thank you, sir. And Suhas Chakma, Director, Rights and Risk Analysis Group. Thank you so much, Suhas, for joining me. Let me straight away go to Ambassador Veena Sikri. Opening comments from you, madam. Is this a historic change that is taking place in Dhaka, or a change or a coup dressed up in the larger facade of polls and democracy?
This is a continuation of the 2024 regime change operation. They're trying to legitimize that regime change operation through these fake elections, which were just completed today. We do know, at least the reports from Dhaka are, that voting could have been as low as 25%. There were reports all day from across Bangladesh that the voting percentage is exceedingly low, even though they declared it to be 42%, and now by the end they will have 60, 70%. We know that there is this huge aspect of the voting percentage being very, very low. So that's why the same aspect on which they were criticizing Sheikh Hasina in the 2024 election, in fact, the same British High Commissioner who is presently there was doing that in 24. And now in this time, they're accepting that you can have an election without the participation of the single largest party, which is the Awami League.
Okay.
Which is again a very a non-constitutional aspect which is there, and there is absolutely no reason why the Awami League should have been not allowed, and I think that's why the election should not be recognized. I think we have seen Sheikh Hasina's statement. She has put out a very strong statement on the elections, and she's recognized. The Awami Leaguers have stayed away, the minorities have stayed away. People have been sitting at home, so they're not going to accept this election result when they know they were sitting at home and not voting. How are they going to accept the election result? The referendum is another, really a charade, because there are these, originally there were 84 questions. Now they brought it down to just 4 sectors. And you have to give one yes or no vote to all of that.
Okay.
And the ballot box, the ballot paper for the referendum has no serial numbering. So there can be unlimited printing, and you can just take it immediately that there's a yes vote.
Okay.
Now, if yes vote, they will want to change the constitution. And you know what? Tarique Rahman has already changed his point of view twice. You mentioned about him. He said in the beginning, I'm going to vote no on the referendum. Then he changed it to yes after pressure from the West and from ISI. Then he said in the beginning that I will never form a unity government. I will be on my own. Today he has just said that I'm ready to be in a coalition. So obviously these election results are shaky, and I think they're going to declare some kind of a unity government to keep Yunus as president.
Okay, let me go across to Barrister Mohibul Hasan Chaudhry. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me. I know Awami League has not been able to participate, but my question to you is, what do you foresee? Do you think that BNP is a front runner in this whatever election that has taken place today?
See, the BNP leadership is also concerned about the result itself, because there are reports from different very reliable sources that Yunus is trying to artificially show that Jamaat Islami has won almost as many as BNP seats, and whether the winning side will be allowed to form the executive part of the government. So BNP is still not settled. The election itself was part of a negotiated settlement between the stakeholders who were involved in the regime change operation. They wanted some kind of an exit for the interim regime, and also to justify the things that they were doing. You will note, just 3 days before the election, they had signed an they have signed an agreement with United States, where Bangladesh, given the situation that we are facing economically, where there is a huge foreign currency crisis, there is a major revenue collection problem, economy is in absolute mess. They have promised to buy Boeing aircrafts, which are not really needed. They have promised to buy wheat from United States, cotton from United States. And there's a list of things that they have done whilst in government. And now, through this referendum and this election, they're asking for a safe exit and a continuing stake in decision making.
Okay.
So if you look at one of the key proposals here, which is not almost, exactly like how Pakistan is ruled, that president can dismiss a parliament, an elected parliament. A selected president who will be taken up through the vote of the parliamentarians will have the right to dismiss a parliament, an entire elected parliament, as is the case in Pakistan. So the constitutional framework, they want to make it exactly like Pakistan, just like how Pakistan has a Senate There is this upper house which has been proposed, but people have not been consulted. People do not know what are these changes. There are 84 constitutional changes that has been proposed, and people have only been asked to say yes or no. And the entire yes-no game is just a sham process to just legitimize their whatever they have done. And but going forward, at least right now, a lot of people in Bangladesh do feel a sense of relief, in a sense that at least we won't be able, we don't have to see Yunus for a long period of time. But then again, they don't know that Yunus has already hatched a plan to keep his grip in power through the presidency, through this so-called 180 days period as Constituent Assembly, when all these proposed amendments will have to be passed in the parliament. So the country is going towards a constitutional anarchy. And if we have chaos, constitutional chaos and anarchy, these vested interests, without any political legitimacy, without any mandate from the people, will continue to exert their influence and power in decision making.
Okay.
So it's a new beginning, but a chaotic a chaotic beginning towards constitutional anarchy.
Okay, Professor Swaran Singh, what does it mean for India's national security?
I think the fundamental challenge for India's national security comes from at least two fronts. One, that the landscape of political narratives have fundamentally changed. I heard when you said 5 names of possible prime ministers, you included Mufti Rezaul Karim also, who's chief of Islami Andolan. So Jamaat-e-Islami is not the only radical conservative Islamist force to reckon with. And therefore, I think that radicalization of discourse, including, as Ambassador Sikri just mentioned, of Tarique Rahman initially being reluctant about July Charter, finally being made to say yes. So there is enormous shift from what used to be a very liberal political landscape, with the two Begums dominated in the politics, as we keep saying, for 3 decades nearly. Only case where 50 seats of Jatiya Sansad were meant only for women to be nominated on proportional representation basis, to now such extreme radicalization. And second, of course, very clearly is enormous substantial deceleration of Bangladesh that was being seen under Sheikh Hasina as a model of economic development in South Asia. So both these radicalization and deceleration would directly impact on relations with India, on whether people will flow over to try to come to Indian side, and that could disrupt bilateral relations increasingly. And how to deal with that is a major challenge. Even if India has made overtures of foreign minister going there recently, but if entire landscape is getting radicalized and economic deceleration is creating turmoil and unrest on the ground, all the major issues that voters wanted in this election is about inflation control, end of corruption, jobs, infrastructure. Now, if radicalization is the path in Bangladesh now, I'm not sure how that resurgence of economic development is going to be revived, because I think that economic resources are going to go in very different direction in that sense.
Okay.
And radicalization would mean advantage Pakistan, advantage China. United States, in fact, is already making an assessment, and that partly is the reason why they signed that trade deal just 3 days before elections, because influence of Pakistan and China is definitely going to increase, even if BNP, which is the initial trends are clearly saying that out of about 50 constituencies where trends are visible, BNP is supposed to be leading in about 30 of such constituencies, and JMI is lagging far behind right now, about 12 seats or so. So in that sense, if the overall landscape is getting radicalized, economy is getting decelerated, initial internal turmoil inside Bangladesh is not going to disappear very soon, and that is not a good news for India,
Okay.
both in terms of relationship and security.
Okay, Swahas, I'm not going to ask the usual question to you on the minorities. I'm not going to ask that question. What happened? I'm going to ask you today, why is Bangladesh hurtling towards Islamism?
It has always been there, I mean, not today. And if you look at the history of the East Bengal, prior to that, undivided Bengal from 1800 onwards. So it has always been there. We cannot deny the fact that religion plays an important role for our identity. So Bangladesh, I think, I mean, has been going through this for a long period of time. I think what we had seen is that initially or throughout the history, the Bengal part of Islam, I mean, Islam in Bengal was completely different from other parts of South Asia or undivided India. They were much more liberal, accommodative, and I think, I mean, despite disagreement on many issues, I think Prime Minister Hasina tried to ensure that there is at least some space for, liberalism, people with other identities, etc. And that has been, I mean, completely destroyed this time. And the identity politics in Bangladesh showing sometimes they are very Bengali about their identity. Sometimes they identify with their languages. Then sometimes they identify themselves absolutely based on religious identity. And I think this is the time for them to identify based on religious identity, or partly also because India, we are a Hindu majority country, and because the Awami League is there, we have been supporting the Awami League, rightly so, because if the Awami League is not there, then I think for us as a country, our existence also would be in question. I mean, if you cannot support a political party which brought independence, which has been a partner. If we do not support them, then where would the army go? I think my fear at this point of time, beyond the religious identification, that this religious identification is not going to go away. So they are going to harp on the religious fundamentalism, anti-Indianism, and they have created a situation from where they cannot come out of it. Now, for example, if you lift the ban on Awami League, there will be massive outcry. Possibly there will be so much violence. The government itself will be overthrown. So which political party in Bangladesh, whether it's Jamaat Islami or the or the BNP, will dare to lift the ban on Awami League? Now, if you do not lift the ban on the Awami League, you are depriving political rights to about 40 to 50% of the population, even at this point of time, which will increase over the period of time. So we have, I think, a situation which, just to, I mean, complement what Professor Singh had mentioned, then I think we have to bear in mind that this is a government which will continue in this kind of a situation for the time till they are overthrown.
Okay. So
that's going to be, until then they are going to harp only on one issue, Islamic identity. Even if people do not believe in, they will still continue with it, just to show their, anger or their opposition to India. So that's going to happen.
Another side of this coin, or the, part of the same argument is when the conservatism rise in societies, women also disappear. Ambassador Sikri, women have disappeared. This is a country which had 2 women prime ministers. They dominated the politics of Bangladesh for more than a quarter of a century, maybe 30 years, more than that. Why have women candidates disappear? I mean to say, we can have a so-called quick journalistic approach to a thing, okay, this Islamism is on rise. But I mean to say, it has to be nourished at the level of society. It has to be nourished at the level of day-to-day activities. That is why we see that suddenly women have disappeared in elections in Bangladesh, madam. When you were there as India's High Commissioner, did you notice it?
Not at all. I think that the presence of women has been one of the most dynamic parts of life in Bangladesh. And when I was there as High Commissioner, when
okay, I think there's a bit of a problem with Ambassador Sikri's line. Barrister Chaudhary, can you take this question? Where have women disappeared in Bangladesh?
You see, Bangladesh remains a liberal society, a liberal country. The problem is that a quarter of the army, the civil service, and certain foreign stakeholders are colluding to establish the extremists the Islamists and only the extremists of the Islamists in the institutions of the state. If tomorrow the country holds a completely free and fair and participatory election, the Islamists will not even get more than 15% of the total vote share. The only reason now they're able to flex their muscle is because certain institutions of the state are sponsoring them, are assisting them. So it is a state-sponsored Islamism that we are seeing there. Majority of the people have rejected them in each and every election. And now these institutions, individuals from there are making comments like, oh, the liberal parties have failed. They had been all corrupt. There was no development. Let us see the Islamists. And this has come from the army chief himself. He has said that to the wider audience several times. And the problem is the whole rise of Islamism in Bangladesh is now, a lot of us feel that it's a spontaneous, voluntary thing. It is not. It is being assisted by the government, the intelligence services, at the behest of Pakistan's ISI, who are very present in Bangladesh. They want to create another wing of Pakistan on that part of the, in our part of the world.
Mr.
And
Chaudhary, a lot of journalists who went from Delhi, in Dhaka, they said there were no posters of Awami League. There has been no pushback from secular parties like you also on the streets, if I may take a position of a devil's advocate.
It's not just the Awami League. The Jatiyo Party is effectively out of the race. They had not been allowed to take part in many of the seats. The several independent candidates, one of the prominent being Barrister Rumin Farhana, who was from the BNP, but she stood as an independent candidate, very vocal on women's rights and very liberal progressive politician. But today we can't find her in the race because the machineries of the state, they were after her agents, did not even allow them to stand. So whatever we are seeing today, it has nothing to do with what people want, but how the state is acting and reacting.
Absolutely. Professor Swaran Singh, a lot of sociologists would say that the modernization has killed the cultural codes, it created religious uniformities across the world. But, the larger issue here is that it has indeed subordinated the Bangladeshi identity to the larger Islamic identity. This is something which cannot be set aside. Are we witnessing desecularization of Bangladeshi society in the same breadth and length that we witnessed 10 years ago when Erdogan took power in Turkey? Is that being repeated in Bangladesh? Though it took a different process, he jumped into the electoral bus and did away with all the democratic concessions, Erdogan. Here, the same thing has happened, like Muslim Brotherhood, when Sisi came to power, they all jump into the bandwagon of democracy and then they dismantle what democracy stands for.
Absolutely, Karthik. I'm happy you brought this point up because I was hearing Suhas say that Islamic identity has always been there. But the way I understood the liberation of Bangladesh when I was a young student, I understood that the Bengali identity was much stronger compared to Islamic identity, and that is why East Pakistan decided to become a separate independent country. And therefore, Bengali identity also subsumes the fact that, there is enormous empowerment of women, there's enormous liberal, literary, educated culture that we have known. Indeed, in entire East and West Pakistan, the initial communism was emerging only in East Pakistan, which is Bangladesh. So you're right that fundamental liberal identity of Bangladesh, where women could feel empowered and equal, that seems to be, reversing itself into a far more theocratically driven Islamic identity, which is coming to the forefront. I agree it's a possibility that, these could not be as important and as powerful as they appear to be sometimes, because radical voices catch greater attention and media covers that kind of shrill noise. But the fact that across party lines, that is what I'm saying, not only just the parties that are Islamic parties, you made mention of, for example, Nahid Islam, also fundamentally a modern but fundamentally conservative voice of youth of the National Citizen Party that was created early last year, I think in January. So that fundamental drift of rapidly growing, developing, liberal Bangladesh, with which India was perfectly at home and India was having excellent relationship with that kind of power elite, that is reversing. And I think the silent non-presence of large number of voters, and that is why the low voting that is happening as we are seeing, is a reflection of large number of people. In fact, most people are saying that the elderly people generally are not trusting the interim government, is not trusting the elections, whereas the conservative and youth is relatively perhaps inclined to go in
Okay.
that kind of refrain that we notice now. So yes, there is a fundamental drift, according to me, in the political landscape in Bangladesh.
Absolutely. Ambassador Sikri, good to have you back. Do you think that, this reversal, what we witness, is the main strand of the Bangladeshi politics? Like, a lot of sociologists say that what we witnessed between 1991 and 2014 in India was an exception, which is coalition politics. But the larger political structure of India is a unitary status, in the sense one big dominant party and number of regional parties and small parties. So from that context, from that political standpoint of view, madam, do you think that this is the larger rubric of the Bangladeshi politics, and what we witnessed in the last 25 years was a sheer exception to the movement where Bengalis felt they are being subjugated by the dominant Pakistani identity, but the basic strand remained the same because Mujibur himself was part of Awami League?
No, I don't agree. No, I don't agree at all. I think Bangladesh is a very dynamic political environment, and I don't agree with Professor Saran saying that it's a definitive move towards radicalization. No, because I think even now, even during the last 18 months, there have been at least 2 occasions when the women and the men from the universities have erupted on the streets. Yunus tried to put this. He said, I'm going to have music and dance teachers. Jamaat-e-Islami forced him to cancel that, and the women came on the streets. And recently, the Amir of Jamaat-e-Islami said something very derogatory about women. And the women came on the streets. The women are saying, the men are saying, culture and religion are 2 sides of the same coin. That is what Bangladesh wants. That's all of South Asia recognizes that your cultural identity is important and your religious identity is important. What the Jamaat-e-Islami is trying to do is to push through a purely religious identification. And they're being supported by Pakistan on that, because Pakistan has done that in Pakistan. And they're trying to do the same thing in Bangladesh. So actually, India has a huge constituency in Bangladesh, at least 50%. 40% definitely, I think the Awami Leaguers who basically accept, a constitution which has democracy and nationalism and secularism and social justice. But also beyond that, there are people who may not support the Awami League, who may not support Sheikh Hasina, but they support the values of the liberation war. We have to recognize that. We have to recognize that this 50% constituency is there. We have to continue to work with them. We have to continue to work with the constituency that is the most friendly towards India. You cannot accept what Jamaat-e-Islami is trying to do. The people of Bangladesh are resisting. How can we not be part of that? I'm surprised how we can just accept, oh, no, it's going to be like that from now on. No, it's not. The people of Bangladesh are resisting. They voted with their feet today by not going to the polling booth, by indicating their displeasure at this kind of constitutional anarchy that they want. So I think that the Bangladesh liberal thought is alive. We have to look for it, work with it, and develop it, and support it.
Professor Swarensik, 30 seconds. I really need to take a break.
Just one quick point: out of 2,000 candidates contesting, women candidates are less than 80. If the women have not disappeared from political landscape, then what else?
It is less than 4% today, but it was never been like that before.